So Gumbamalgan, Gumbanani Gerandu, which is good evening. It's good to see you here in Barragum, which is the traditional language of the community that I grew up on the Darling Downs. My name is Vicky McDonald, and it's my great privilege to be the State Librarian and CEO here at the State Library of Queensland. And on behalf of my colleagues, I welcome you to the first Game Changers for 2024, Orange Sky Australia founders Lucas Patchett and Nick Marchese. So welcome this evening. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Yagara and Turrbal people, and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also acknowledge any First Nations people in the room this evening. State Library is located on Kurilpa Point, which is a traditional meeting, gathering and sharing place for Aboriginal people, and it's certainly a tradition that we continue here at State Library every day of the year. Game Changers is a Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame initiative made possible through our partnership with Queensland University of Technology. And I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our speakers this evening, Lucas Patchett and Nick Marchese. Again, welcome. Also our facilitator, Ruth Knight, and also Professor Craig Furneaux, leader of the Australian Centre of Philanthropy and Non-Profit Studies at QUT, Debbie Best, Chair of the Library Board of Queensland, and other members of the Library Board of Queensland who are here this evening, Queensland Library Foundation councillors, members of the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame Management and Induction Committees. Also, a warm welcome to our founding partner, QUT. I know there's many members of QUT here this evening. And importantly, our generous partners and sponsors, Pitcher Partners, Channel 7, Morgans, Ray White and Springfield City Group. And also to our friends and supporters joining us here at State Library at Southbank and also online this evening. Game Changers recognises the risk takers and pathfinders who have made a significant contribution to Queensland's business landscape. We hope that their determination and energising stories inspire a new generation of business leaders to make bold and creative choices. Like tonight's guests, social impact innovators Lucas and Nick, and of course, as you know, Lucas and Nick co-founded Orange Sky in 2014. So in October, they'll be celebrating 10 years of significant service. And they noticed the absence of free laundry services for people experiencing homelessness in their community. And it all started with Sudsy, the van the boys fitted with washing machines and dryers in their garage and drove around to local parks in Brisbane. Today, Orange Sky Australia has a fleet of vans in over 34 locations across Australia, including remote and disaster-affected areas. Orange Sky understands how clean clothes, a warm shower and a non-judgmental conversation can make a huge difference in someone's day. Dr. Ruth Knight will facilitate the evening's conversation, and Ruth has an impressive 25-year career in non-profit leadership, social enterprise and philanthropy. She has received several industry awards as well as the Centenary Medal for Distinguished Services to the community for her efforts in helping to reduce homelessness and create social change. Tonight's conversation is broadcast on State Library's website, and we will use Slido to collect questions from online viewers and also those of you on site this evening as well. So if you go to slido.com and enter the event code QBLHOF, or simply scan the QR code on our screens throughout the event. And Ruth will do her best to get to as many questions as possible. And you'll see when you go into Slido that you can actually vote on different questions that others have asked, so they actually go to the top of the list as well. If you're sharing your thoughts about tonight's conversation on social media, we encourage you to use the hashtag QBLHOF as well. And finally, I'd like to invite you to visit our latest exhibition, Purpose Built, which is on level 2 in the SLQ gallery at the end of the corridor, and it will be open after this evening's talk. Purpose Built explores the transformative potential of architectural design and its pivotal role in shaping communities and shifting perspectives of housing today. More fresh inspiration for you as well, and I know it's been very thought-provoking, that particular exhibition, and many people have returned several times. So I do hope you enjoy the conversation, and I'll hand over to Ruth. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, everybody. It's so lovely to see you all. Now, I just want to pop that little Slido back up there, the little link for everybody, because I just want to give you a couple more minutes to make sure that you've got in there, got into Slido, and you're ready to ask some questions. Thank you, Vicky, for that lovely introduction and welcoming us here tonight. I want to also thank everybody that's on the live stream that's joining us as well. You are also very invited to participate with us and join on the Slido, so I hope you're getting in there. But obviously, the main people that we'd love to thank is both Lucas and Nick for joining us today and coming and having a conversation with us.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Librarians are very good at thanking people. I reckon that's the 15th time we've been thanked in the last hour. So
Yeah, good.
thank you, Ruth, for hanging out with us.
Wait till we ask you some questions, then we'll see if you want to thank us. No, really tonight is about having a chat about your endeavours, I suppose, your innovations, what you love doing. We really want you to share some stories with us, just between us and the four walls here, and everybody on live stream. We really want to hear a little bit about your backgrounds and what is Orange Sky all about? What does it do? And I want to really take you to now what it means for the community, but also what it means for the future for you. So that's a little bit about where I would like to take the conversation, but we're really happy for the audience and for you all to join and take the conversation where you'd like it to go as well. So I'm going to try and keep a good eye on the screen. You obviously can see the questions as well, so if you see anything that you want to jump on and answer, then please do. But we'll just try and keep it smooth and keep you talking. Is that okay? All right. Excellent. Okay, well, let's get going. I think my first question, maybe Lucas, you can kick us off by really telling us what sparked that initial idea of taking a washing machine, putting it in a van, and then taking it out and doing the laundry for people who were experiencing homelessness. How did that happen?
Yeah, it's a bit of a backstory beyond or before Orange Sky. Nick and I were lucky enough to go to school here in Brisbane, and the school we went to actually ran a food service for people experiencing homelessness. So Nick and I were pretty different at school in lots of different ways, but that was something we always connected on, was this concept of giving back and service and volunteering. So I remember the first time being a 15-year-old, getting up nice and early, heading to school, heading down to the park, cooking up a barbecue for people, and all of a sudden you have your mind blown that 2 kilometres from where you go to school every day, there's 40 people in a park having breakfast, you're cooking up a barbecue for, and chatting to some people that I'd never, normally talk to, and them, one fella in particular, Harry, who reminded me just of my dad and my uncle, who had the same stories that just went on and on and on, and he had all these terrible jokes, except he was sleeping in a park, and I can remember as a 15-year-old just having that moment and being like, why is this such a big issue? And Nick and I had similar experiences of that throughout high school. Sort of left school, that part of our life was almost left behind us. I went to uni full time. Nick went into work full time, and a couple of years out, I'd gone overseas and come back, and I was sort of in this lull of uni hadn't quite started. Had no job, nothing was really happening. That beautiful time when you're 19 or 20.
You'd just been dumped.
I'd been dumped, thanks. Thanks, Nick. That's what friends are for. And Nick and I were, the second day I was back from overseas, we were having breakfast in a cafe, and we'd spoken about this idea for a couple of years before, and Nick had a sketch in his notebook of this truck with washing machines in it, and it was kind of just one of those things that sat in a book, and Nick said, I've been thinking about this again, and mate, I've got nothing on, let's give it a go. Let's just give it a red hot crack. And I think from there it was sort of this mixture of naivety or stubbornness or persistence on the positive side of things that I was like, let's give this a go. And we had, through that experience at school, we'd seen the value of bringing services to where people were at. We saw this value of mobility. We saw this value of also difference as well. Like food's food's done incredibly well. There's so many good places to get a feed, and so if we could find something that plugged into that ecosystem, we could actually make a pretty big impact. And yeah, so that was as simple as it was. We had that idea. We had a van that Nick was running a different project out of. We convinced this company to give us 2 washers, 2 dryers, and told our mums, and mums were like, start doing your own washing first. And I don't care what you do, just make sure you have insurance, were the 2 bits of advice, which were 2, or 1 bit of advice and 1 bit of, slagging us off. And it was as simple as that. We called this thing Sudsy. We put Orange Sky on the side and we hit the streets and started washing. And that, I think, very targeted initially around people sleeping rough, but never, and if you asked us to map out a million scenarios, we never would have said, where Orange Sky is today. And I think it just started with this curiosity, with this, I suppose, wondering why was this such a big challenge in our community and what else could we do about it. And it started at school but then flowed through to the tender age of 20.
And what was the reaction as you were building this idea, and you obviously had an idea, and it sounds like you also had this idea in your mind about what you wanted to do. What was the reaction from people, especially people on the streets? Like, this had never been done before, you were really innovating here. Did you have lots of support, or were people like, what are you doing?
Probably more of the latter. I think telling people was this sort of like, why would you want to do that? The machines will never work. Who the hell's going to wash their clothes in a park? Then as you start going through the process and you start building this, and you convincing an electrician to come and try and wire this thing up in our van, to going to the hardware shop and buying all the different parts that we thought we'd need to bring it together, to rocking up the first morning. And the first morning we actually rocked up alongside our old school food van because we thought they'll at least be friendly. We might know 1 or 2 people there, and that's a nice place to start. So it was up at Wickham Park, just above Roma Street there, and remember rocking up the first morning and everyone's like, what the hell is this? Like, are you some like church or cult, or like, what are you trying to sell us? What the hell is this? And you're 2 like young blokes, like, are you guys all right? Sort of thing. So I think it was took a little bit of convincing, I suppose. And I think people in that environment, they typically have their guards up already. They're not overly willing to trust people straight away. And I think for us, it was just about convincing people we're literally just 2 young blokes. We're here to give it a go. We had this idea. We've got this van, and do you have washing? And it was this weird question of, I remember the first morning we rocked up and met this fella by the name of Jordan, and Nick literally woke him up and said, have you got washing? He's like, what the hell are you? And we broke the machines. They didn't work. We had to have 3 goes at actually getting this van to work. But once it worked, and we actually kept showing up as well. And it's funny, we've just recently reconnected with Jordan, and he sort of reflects on that moment, being like, I thought you guys would never come back. You'd just be another sort of drop in the ocean that disappears. But I think for us, it was a mixture of stubbornness, but also persistence as well, to keep coming back. But definitely it took a little bit of convincing along the way, and that's been especially in those early years, like convincing, what are 2 20-year-olds, what the hell are we doing, and what's the end game of this?
So Nick, tell us a little bit about then the innovation and the side of you that really wanted to pursue an idea that hadn't been done before, or that you knew would make a difference, but you weren't quite sure in the early stages what that was going to be. What really do you love about innovation and trying social innovation? I should add that, because you were really making a difference to people's lives. What is it that you love about being an innovator?
Yeah, I think the first thing I love about it is I can't spell it, nor entrepreneur. That's an awful word. And then philanthropist is just a cooked word as well. So I think building off what Lucas said, like that naivety, we were just 2 blokes that were trying to do this, what everyone was telling us, this impossible feat on a weekend. We didn't have a mortgage or kids, so it was just like there was nothing really to lose apart from a bit of time, and we loved hanging out together, and we loved solving problems, and we had a lot of fun while doing that. So it was something that was quite selfish, our innovation back then. It was like, here's something that's impossible, and can we just give it a go? And like Lucas said, we broke a lot of washing machines. We had to tell the washing machine company it wasn't going to work, but I think it moved, in the very early stages of Orange Sky, it was simply a hardware problem. It was, could we get washing machines to work in a van? And Lucas was studying engineering. I loved making things. So it was a really enjoyable problem to solve. And then once the van actually worked, we realised what we thought we were out there to do at Orange Sky was actually completely wrong, because it was like, fuck, what do we do now? Like, the machine's working, we're stealing water from the council, and we're...
Oh, that's around the library, mate.
Oh, sorry. 5 minutes I've been kicked out, sorry. Hopefully someone can beat that. And it's like, what do we do now? Jordan's washing was in the machine. It was going to take an hour to wash and dry his clothes. And like I said, we were tethered to the park. And so we simply sat down and we had a chat. And that conversation with Jordan changed our lives. And it also changed the trajectory of Orange Sky, is that we then went back and rewrote our mission to positively connecting communities, because what we realised is that we just found a way to connect people. And I think, over the last nearly 10 years now, that's been the innovation journey of Orange Sky, is that we have this broad mission of bringing people from all walks of life together. We have now over 3,000 incredible volunteers. We have thousands of incredible supporters. Some of them, we still get to meet every day, and some of them are in the group tonight. And then we have friends that trust us, and they're the three things that we get to innovate with, is, how can we find friends that aren't using Orange Sky services and get them to trust us with potentially their only possessions in their life? How can we find a new, unique way to engage a volunteer and, connect them with our service, but also support them? Like, just diverging a little bit on volunteers, we thought Orange Sky was a service where someone was going out to help another person. And we couldn't have been any more wrong with that. But it probably took us a while definitely took us a while to realise that. But the amount of volunteers who are lonely, isolated, disconnected, and potentially the only interaction they have in a day is volunteering. And so you see these extraordinary people rock up with this thirst to connect and engage, which is just extraordinary. And then same with our donors. I saw a photo from Mount Isa up there, and we have a donor in Mount Isa in Queensland that gives us $1 a week from her pension. And those $52 are incredibly significant to us at Orange Sky. However, now the people that give to Orange Sky is just tremendous. So what for me comes back to, we innovate around trust, and that's our biggest asset at Orange Sky, with conversations, with technology, with hardware. We'll keep on changing those things, but I also think, and it's great to see some photos of people washing clothes following the Brisbane floods, I think in 1897 or something like that. People are like, wow, Orange Sky's so innovative. And there's like Glencoe or something at like a mobile laundry truck. And I think that's a big part of our relearning journey, is maybe, on this game changer topic, maybe Orange Sky is the group that's playing the game at the moment, but I think we know that for millennia people have been innovating, and I think that's been a big part of our innovation story, is that maybe Orange Sky is new and novel, but for 60,000 years people have been coming together around waterways, and people have been coming together and sharing story and culture in conversation. So Orange Sky is actually not that innovative. We've just found a way to do it in our current context.
Yeah. So let me pick up on the importance then of a conversation and connecting with people, because as you said, it started with laundry, and of course you still do that, but you now don't just work in the city, you work in rural and remote areas, you work in disaster areas. You take your vans, but you take the conversations, you have the conversations with people who need them. So why is it so important, do you think, for this connection and for people to have a conversation with someone who cares? Why is that so incredibly important for many people?
I think it's a basic human right. Like, we're all lucky enough here in this room, I assume, to have a fresh set of clean clothes, to have a shower in the morning, but even beyond that is to have a group that gives us connection. If that's family, if that's friends, if that's workplace, if that's this library community, I think it's just a fundamental and basic human right. And I think the world's getting more disconnected. People are losing that sense of connection. And laundry, it's this funny thing that is something that we all need. It's a great equaliser of people, and it takes time. And I think those three things come together, and you're kind of stuck, which is the weird but interesting thing, is that you put your washing in the van and if they're your only possessions in the world, you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to keep eagle-eyed on that washing, especially if it's one of the first times of engaging with our service. But two, the volunteers, they're not leaving because they're such this mutual respect of like, well, let's just have a chat. And that started with Jordan that first morning of going, oh, okay, well, how you going? I'm Lucas, Jordan. And you just get to chatting and it creates this amazing connection. So it's not this force, like we must come together and connect and have fun. It's actually laundry's the ticket or the thing that kind of forces that, for want of a better word. And that's different for everyone. For some people, that's might take 6 months. For some people, it might take a day. For some people, it might take 3 years to actually engage in terms of that conversation and that connection element. But the knowledge that we're there and we're going to be there every week and it's going to be similar faces and they're going to have an Orange Sky shirt on, they're going to be friendly, they're going to be engaging, and they're going to be up for a chat. And if that's about, big problems in the world or about the footy or the weather on the weekend, then they can flex to all those things. But it's grounded in that, I think, sense of connection that we all crave, and sometimes we are too, nervous or scared to actually ask for it. So it's this beautiful kind of creates this environment that breeds that.
I'm going to pick up from one question from the audience, because I think you've said this before, that it always comes up, is because you called it Orange Sky from the beginning. Just quickly, because there's lots of people burning to know, why did you call it Orange Sky?
So that's our most common question, so you can have this pot plant as a gift for asking that. So Orange Sky is a song by a British singer-songwriter called Alexi Murdoch, and the song talks about helping out your brothers and sisters and everyone being under an orange sky. And as Lucas said, we weren't associated with any religion or we had this idea of calling it the Brisbane Laundry Truck, and I'm really glad we didn't, because that would have aged pretty awkwardly around the country. So we sort of were like, well, let's call it Orange Sky, put it on our first van without any permits or legal checking, and we haven't been sued.
And we've got a trademark now, so that's good.
Thanks, McCulloch Robinson, for that.
Cool. All right. So I want to pick up a little bit more on these stories of conversations. And really, again, are there stories that you've got that could really demonstrate, I suppose, that power of that conversation? So you've just explained, that's obviously a really important part of what your volunteers now do, is have those conversations. Is there any really good story you've got about a good conversation that led to something, or what happened? Is it just about a yarn, or is it more than that? What happens because of, I suppose my question is, what happens because of those conversations?
Yeah, I think some of the most profound moments of my life have been through those conversations. And again, another photo, I can't pronounce the park, Barilpi Bunyapa Park in West End, that iconic park with the keyboard or piano in it. I just came from shift there. It was my first time ever going to that shift. Orange Sky now runs over 350 shifts every week, and at the same time, same place, that van's rocked up for about 8 months now that we've run that shift. And there was some friends of Orange Sky, like Trevor, who I met when I was 15, with volunteering with my mum, who still rocks up, who lives in a boarding house and has an intellectual disability, and his sense of community is rocking up and playing tricks with people. There was a tremendous amount of young friends accessing the food service who, what surprised me was there was probably a third of those young people were wearing food delivery backpacks and were still working, but also accessing, the free services. And there was a bunch of, new Australians coming to our service. And I was connecting with one of our volunteers, Anna, whose mum was also volunteering with her for her first shift, which was super beautiful. And Anna's mum had migrated from Spain to Australia when she was 30, and Anna was 30. And we're sort of talking about this idea of coming to a new country back then, being Australia, and making new friends. And they were talking about this opportunity to come to West End, being a multicultural area, making new friendships, and how scary and lonely that was, and now being a part of that community now through 2 generations. But they've been I sort of was saying, is there a friend who you wash clothes for? And there's a gentleman that's been coming there for 8 months, one of our first ever washers, who they speak Spanish with every week. And I think it's just a reminder that every conversation at Orange Sky is different. Some conversations are non-verbal, some are in a different language, some involve just listening. There's a volunteer story or a shift story in Melbourne where Lucas and I were out on that shift and there was some washing neatly folded, and I thought it was a good idea to put the washing in the van because we're a washing service, and then all the local volunteers were like, "What are you doing?" And they were like, the friend just brings the washing as their ticket to come and interact, but those clothes had never been washed. It was just their excuse to come down and hang out. And I think that's the sobering reminder, is that people are just looking for an opportunity to connect. And we've had conversations on Orange Sky shifts where people have said, I haven't spoken to anyone for a week, and it's the first time I've ever shared this. I was on shift in Melbourne on Monday, and a new volunteer had recently retired, and they were like, I have lost my purpose, and now I volunteer through the service. But I think, far from our amazing volunteers, our amazing donors, what the conversations that really impact me is where, a friend who is potentially at their lowest time in their life, who has been let down, has suddenly become homeless, trusts Orange Sky, not only with their possessions, which are incredibly significant and profound, but they trust us with that opportunity to have a safe space to connect, and I hope we never take that for granted.
How do you create that sense of culture within these now large volunteer teams? Because you're talking about a sense of non-judgment and respect and dignity. How are you creating that team culture amongst all of your volunteers? How do you manage to do that after growing so much?
Yeah, we're lucky that, one, we're not paying people, so I think that helps. But I think more so it's about people are there on the most part for the right reasons, and they're really intrinsically motivated to support. And I think it goes beyond training and all that sort of stuff. There's one thing that I think cuts through and really always hits home for me is, and it's embedded in our volunteers, and if you asked, of our 3,500 volunteers, who could recite our mission statement or our values or whatever, it would be pretty low, but I reckon we'd have a 99% cut through around what we call people that use our service, and that universally is friends. And I think just that word and language is so important to us, and especially in homelessness, there's so many labels around, you're homeless. And so if you're homeless, when do you stop being homeless? Or is that a label you have for life? Or how does that actually work? But I think that word friend kind of cuts through that. It's a big equalizer. It really sets the tone for volunteers. And we don't do in-person training anymore, but we used to do this activity when first volunteers were coming through and would say, now turn to the person next to you and have a conversation. And the room would just erupt in conversation. And then the next thing was well, they're the exact same conversations you're going to have out in the streets. It's not anything different. Just because someone's having a shit-house time doesn't mean that they're all of a sudden don't care about the footy or don't have, care about what's happening in the world or whatever that barrier might be, or that sort of stigma that you have built in your head. And so a lot of our work now is around building that sense of destigmatization, around finding friends and supporting as many people as possible. So we definitely haven't got the secret sauce for perfectly embedding culture in every group, but I think it's those little things that all contribute to that, and I think being really driven by a strong sense of motivation around actually we're there, like Nick said, support people. Washing is the ticket and the conversation's there, but also some volunteers, they bloody love washing, absolutely love washing. And they're there for washing, don't make no bones about it. But then on the flip side, there's also volunteers that hate washing, and they're there for chat. So
which side are you on now? Do you love your washing now, or?
No. I have enough. I do enough. Maybe it works. So, but yes, I think it's, and that's the beauty of it. Any team environment. I think the great thing for us, we've got our youngest volunteers 18, our oldest volunteers 93. We've got two peaks from an age perspective around 25 and around sort of 58. So 2/3 female, 1/3 male. So no matter where you are or who you are, when you rock up to a shift, you'll see someone that you can connect with. And I think that's the cool thing. I had this moment a few weeks ago out on shift as well, and it's this in Fortitude Valley, just across from the fire station, and it's probably our longest standing shift. I think the wait list to get on this shift to become a volunteer just on this one specific shift is like 4 years, and it's because the team, which is an older fella, an older lady, and then about four or five sort of younger people, sort of mid-20s, and they've been doing that shift for 8 years, and they've had this same team for 8 years, and so, but they've now formed this beautiful connection where the young guys pay out the old fella about, you know, being old and slow or whatever it might be, and he throws shit back at them, and they've got this like...
That's strike two, Lucas.
Sorry, thanks. You said the F word, so it's for 3. So they've built this beautiful relationship, which they never would have had if it wasn't for this like orange van that they all connect on each week. And then the people that engage with that service, they see that and they will become a part of that. And so it creates these beautiful communities, and that's repeated 350 times across the week, and that's in some instances retired people, in some instances university students, some people working professionals, and everything and anything in between. And so you get this amazing cohort of people that are doing cool stuff.
Sounds really diverse and bringing all those different people together, but coming together for that common purpose. So let's talk about your team then, because, you know, that's wonderful that you can describe those teams working as volunteers. But you're coming up to 10th anniversary of Orange Sky this year. How have you developed your little team, or your partnership, I suppose, in growing this organisation and working together? What's a couple of things that you can tell us about your team and your relationship?
That's why they put the table in between us, so
we're not friends anymore.
Yeah,
so
we can't sit next to each other.
We like making friends on Orange Sky shifts, but we hate each other. So no, that's a bad joke. So I think, like Lucas mentioned, and for all the good maths people in the room, we started when we were 19. We've been friends since we were in grade 8. We've got different skills, but some things in common, and some things we've taken from each other. Like, one of Lucas's values is fun, and I reckon that's a really good value. So
he's solid.
So I like trying to have as much fun. We both like solving problems, but I was reflecting with you, Ruth, like, Orange Sky's just been this roller coaster of growth opportunities. Like, I remember we were building maybe our 5th van for Sydney in 2015, and we'd been invited to the Queensland Australian of the Year Awards, and like, our parents were getting ready, and Lucas and I were in Newstead building a van because we were about to drive it to Sydney the next morning, and this like little event thing that we'd been nominated for was happening. And then we walked up like late. It was really bad traffic, and I'm pretty sure we walked over the bridge or something. Like, it was all stressful. And then we walked in, and we're like, wow, this is sort of a bit of a big deal, this thing. Like, there's a lot of serious people in this room and whatnot. And we sat over here somewhere, and I said to Lucas, like, if we have to say something, can you say something? I was like, could not like even comprehend. Like, I think we had like glue on ourselves still and paint, and then they announced us as the winners. And it's nice to pay out your friends, but Lucas did this disastrous speech.
I should have sworn.
Yeah, he should have sworn. And so, like, I think there's just been so many moments like that at Orange Sky where we were so naive to the extraordinary opportunity it was to be acknowledged for awards like that. But I think a couple funny jokes, like, as Orange Sky's success grew, so did our BMI. So we had to really think about how do we look after ourselves, and that's been a big part of our friendship is not being great friends to each other, in acknowledging our health journeys that we're on, or the immersion into Orange Sky has been the biggest part of our lives for the last 10 years, and it's been some of the highest and lowest points that we've had. And how do you show up as a friend during that journey? We've again done those highs and lows together, but I think this idea of doing it with your best friend for both those highs and lows has been one of the biggest things I'll be thankful for, or am thankful for in my life. And Lucas is really good at numbers as well, and something that Lucas taught me and reflected on is that for the history of Orange Sky, we've pretty much grown 26% every year. And it's something that Lucas encouraged our team to do, is that if Orange Sky is growing 26% every year, how do we as individuals grow that 26%? And that's been a really beautiful part of our journey, is that there's been some tremendous growth around being more confident in speaking to groups like this, or being more aware of how a washing machine works, or how to fund something like Orange Sky or whatever, but also acknowledging that just because we started Orange Sky doesn't mean that we're the people that run Orange Sky. And Orange Sky's far from us too. We were just the two naive idiots that put the seed in the ground and gave it some water with a bunch of excited friends and family, and that seed sprouted, and now it's this massive tree in Australia and New Zealand, and it's got so many beautiful branches. Some have come and gone, but we were just the two guys that planted the seed, and we're lucky to be a part of that DNA and that branch. But it's been a super fun ride. We still love hanging around that tree, and it brings a lot of fruit. But it's been fun.
Awesome. Thank you. I thought we'd better take a question from Slido. The top one here is, I'm curious to know a bit about your journey, how to make this funded operation that could grow its impact. So you are a charity, but I know that you have some social enterprise elements of you. You have philanthropy. Tell us a little bit about how you've managed to scale and grow, and maybe some of the things that you're working on now to make sure that it is sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. So Orange Sky is a charity, and so we firmly believe in, I suppose, the power of the community powering Orange Sky. So for us, we're 95% privately funded through corporate philanthropy and everyday people who support us with maybe $5 at tax time, or $10 a week, or $1,000 at Christmas time, or whatever it might be. So there's a real broad mix of people that make up Orange Sky. We've got the organisation in Australia and both New Zealand as well that are two separate entities. I think for us, our theory, which again feeds into that maybe naivety or just giving it a go and seeing what happens, has been really about being impact-led. So our firm belief is that the best thing that we can do is make our operation as effective and efficient and impactful as possible, and then that'll attract people to come and support Orange Sky and the work that we do. And part of that has been that we probably, didn't have the patience, or we didn't quite fit in the box to go for government funding or anything like that, and we just got the hell on with it and started helping people. And I think when we did that, you naturally then attract the right people. You break through those different journeys, and there's a question here around those financial barriers or that sustainability that we kept working through. In the first instance, it was almost this crowd-funded operation. We didn't have a charity status. We had the dodgiest website I've ever done that Nick and I built with crayons or sticky tape, and got it going. We didn't even have a bank account. We had a PayPal account, and we had a van that was working, and we were able to create impact. Had a few photos, put them on Facebook, did a news story, and then overnight we saw 2,500 donations from 24 countries around the world. We saw 600 volunteer applications here in Brisbane. 60 volunteer applications. Only 3 could drive a manual van, which is a bad idea if you have a manual van. And that then just set the tone for us of saying, okay, well, that's Brisbane, and then we do Gold Coast next, then we look at Sydney, and then we look at Melbourne, and then Perth and Adelaide. And we just these little chapters of Orange Sky keep popping up. And for us, it's about finding and empowering local people to that idea of being community powered. So we've got local corporates that support the van in Perth. We've got local volunteers that run the van in Perth. We've got then the local philanthropists that might support that van in Perth, or the work we do up in the Kimberleys as well. So I think being very community driven, and then as we've reached through each of those stages of maturity, from crowdfunding to then early adopters, almost philanthropy supporting us, to then being at a point where corporates could support us, to then now having this really nice mix of fundraising where we then can have people who can run events for us on behalf of us, or have more targeted work that we do in remote communities, to recently getting our first significant government grant in the last couple of months as well. To each level of that maturity really helps to for us to keep growing, because we've got that track record, but it's all impact led and impact driven, and really powered by the community. So that's been the kind of theory it's held through so far. And back to our kind of values around learning, it's been give it a go, see what happens, keep learning, get better, and keep refining, I think, as we go, and not. Our chair tells me hope is not a strategy, so you need to do something about it, I think. So
I might just build on that, and it sounds very sophisticated, but I always love sharing this story that we had a Facebook page, and we had a lady by the name of Carol say, when Orange Sky becomes a charity, let me know, and I'll love to check it out. And Lucas got an amazing memory, and a few months after operating, we finally got this charitable status. And Lucas messaged this lady Carol in Brisbane, and we didn't really know much about her. And Carol rocked up to that shift in Wickham Park where we first started, and she engaged in the shift, and it was all a little bit awkward. And then Carol's like, what's next? And we're like, we're going to build another van. And she's like, how much does a van cost? And we're like, 100 grand. And like 100 grand when you're 19 is like a lot of money. It's like
Still is.
it still is, yeah. It's
Hasn't changed, but inflation's not that bad.
okay. And so Carol went down to her purse and wrote a check. And I won't use the F word, but I was like, how do you bank a check for that much money? Like, how does this work? And Carol just believed in us. And I think that's such a, there is some beautiful complexity about Orange Sky, but also there's this like profound simplicity, which is like people saying like, wow, that's a good idea and I want to be a part of it. And that's sort of been the evolution of Orange Sky is, Carol was that first person and sort of building on the remote communities work. Lucas and I went to a healthcare conference in Melbourne, and we were talking about Orange Sky, and the person before us got up and talked about Australia having the highest rates of rheumatic heart disease in the world, and a key contributor to that being access to safe health hardware in remote communities, in particular laundries. And Lucas and I looked at each other and were like, oh, we know a thing or two about laundry. Maybe we could operate in a remote community. And we took that story back here to Brisbane, and we were talking to a philanthropist, and that philanthropist was like, I know the mayor in Lockhart River and I'll fund it. And, that was sort of the simplicity of it. And then we go on this huge, for us as an organisation, a huge cultural journey around how do we work with communities and what does community-led development look like in that space. And, now Orange Sky, a third of our services operate in some of the most remote parts of Australia. We started washing in a new remote community, in the last month in Doomadgee. We're operating here in Queensland in Arakoon, in Lockhart River, in Palm Island, and sort of all the communities around those metro locations as well, like Yarrabah and Cairns and Townsville. But also realising that it's sort of that simple idea that someone says, hey, have you thought about this? We most of the time haven't, because hope isn't a strategy, but listening to people is a massive strategy, and giving things a go is a massive strategy. And what we've been blown away with is that you build a good product and the funding comes most of the time.
Yeah, that deserves a clap. Because that's not like clapping. It does. It's very inspiring. And so I want to pick up on that. For those young people, those students, those 15-year-olds that, and not just the 15-year-olds, all of us that want to be social entrepreneurs, given all of that learning and experience that you now have, what advice would you give to somebody who was thinking of starting a charity or a social enterprise? What would be a couple of those key tips that you would say, don't do this, but do this?
I think Lucas learnt that university credits expire at some point.
Yeah. And you still need to pay for them, so well done, mate. I think it's exactly that. It's give it a go. And if it doesn't work, tweak it, try again, refine it, iterate. Like, I think especially when you're, no matter where you are in that journey, I think that continuous improvement, continuous learning is something that should be embedded in everything that we do. So I think that's, to Nick's point, how pretty much everything at Orange Sky has started and got to the point of where it's gone is have a first go. We lay the first brick, and then other people come in and build the rest of the wall and make it a lot prettier and a lot better than we ever could have made it. But having that ability to do that and keep tweaking it along the way, and just give it a crack. One of our values at Orange Sky is give things a crack, and I think it's one of the things that people are most afraid of when we ask that question in an interview or when we show people values, because it's scary, I think, to take the first step. But I think it probably gets harder as you get further on and you have kids and mortgage and all that sort of stuff. So I think earlier the better, give it a go and see what happens.
It sounds also the way that you've been sharing your vision and your dreams, I suppose, of what you want to do. It's the ability to tell those stories that have encouraged people to join you and support you. So what's the importance of storytelling? I think you like storytelling, and Why do you tell stories? What's the importance behind that?
Yeah, again, not to be a broken record, but stories are super important to us at Orange Sky. But stories are the backbone of this country's existence, and that is been how some of the most precious culture has been passed on and carried on. So I think we all know the power of storytelling. But I'm going to get rid of this top question because I think it's funny. So
it's a good story.
It's a good story. So the question is, did we ever get council approvals or something along the lines of that? So whoever's from the council or due diligence team or...
Leave kindergarten at the back door, please.
This is being live streamed, so it's recorded. So when we started, we didn't have an approval. And we'd spoke to the local council. I was working for Channel 7, one of the amazing sponsors here. And I got connected with the council, and being two young, ambitious guys, we're like, we're going to change the world. And at that point in time, we really scared the decision makers, because it was like, what are you talking about? Like, what is this thing? And again, we told the washing machine company, we're going to put washing machines in the van. And they're like, that won't work. And we told our parents, and they were like, that won't work. You can't wash your own clothes. So like, there was a lot of people that like couldn't comprehend this idea. And at the time, we were very frustrated with that. It was like, no, we're entitled to a permit because we're doing good. But I actually think now, being more mature in that space, we still don't have council approvals, but
yes, we do.
Yes, we do. Sorry, but what we do have is that story, but also this confidence to actually empathise with. We are at that forefront of changing what has not been done before. Like the council were like, "Are you hosting an event in a park?" I'm like, well, you could call it an event, but we're going to rock up every week. And they're like, well, events are once off. And they're like, are you building a community garden? I was like, no, but I guess we can. What's the... And so we didn't fit into a box. And I was like, well, you can't operate. And for that person doing their job at the time, there was nothing we could do. So, we've stolen a lot of water from councils, and, we've done a lot of things that potentially weren't right, but I also think that drove our innovation. Now all of our vans carry their own water. We now, we used to not have enough power in majority of the locations that Orange Sky would operate to run our dryers. We used to use 13 kilowatts of power to dry clothes. So, churches or council parks like literally would have to get the road dug up to get thicker cables put into buildings to run. So, we used to run off these massive diesel generators, and now through our innovation team, we've been able to invent our own clothes dryer, which now our vans run on 1.3 kilowatts of power, and all of our vans are powered by solar power. So, we could have said back then, why is this problem so big and we can't do it? But I think we've either over time worked with our communities, or we've found ways to reshape, and that's really like constraints are such a beautiful thing. And I love councils working with those constraints. So I think we haven't danced around it, but we do have permits now. Thanks, Lucas, for clarifying that. I don't know where I was going with that. Oh, the storytelling. Well, that's an awful story. It didn't have a beginning, middle, or end. But I think, when we would engage with people like that, that was like, that's impossible. It was very easy to say, actually, we're just out on shift with Jordan. And Jordan actually trusted us with his only possessions in his life. And we thought it was impossible too. But why don't you come out and meet Jordan? And I think that story and people seeing it in the flesh was like the biggest thing that ever happens to Orange Sky. Is that we've tried to take photos, we've tried to capture videos and whatnot, but nothing ever captures the moment that happens on an Orange Sky shift.
Has there ever been a time, because that's all beautiful and positive, has there ever been a time though, because my mind's going, has there ever been a time when you've just gone, too much, this is really hard work, I just don't know if we're going to achieve what we want to achieve. Has there ever been a time when you just wanted to give up?
I don't think give up. There's definitely times where I've gone, what the hell are we doing? Not to get strike three. The one that, a couple of spring to mind, one started 2018, we said we're going to launch in New Zealand. Like, it's not that far. It's pretty close to Brisbane-ish. It's closer to Brisbane than Perth. And we had services in Perth. We thought, okay, and this was a time, I think, where we were like, do good things and the money will come. Except the challenge was that we were setting up a brand new organisation, so there was literally $0 in the bank account in Orange Sky New Zealand. And I can remember we'd arranged some funding. There was time. The the van was literally getting on the boat, but there was no money in our bank account. Like, it was a pretty stressful and challenging time, when it'd been the culmination of like 12 months worth of work to get this service there. And so I think all had a moment where we're going, what the hell are we doing? Are we doing the right thing? Is this going to put Orange Sky Australia at jeopardy? Like, how's this all going to wash out? And I can remember about a month later being in New Zealand for the first shift and meeting Guy Mike, who, been a truck driver, he'd injured his back, he lost his job and was sleeping on the streets. And the switch just flicked, and it was like, bloody oath, we're doing the right thing. Like, this is why we're doing this. And then that's laid the foundation now for 6 services in New Zealand, for creating all this amazing impact that never would have been possible. I think that was one time. Another time was March 2020, when for an organisation built on strangers from all walks of life congregating in public spaces for 2 hours, COVID was a shit house time. I can say that for my third strike. So, because that was, and I remember being on a call with our team, being like, we have to pause all of our shifts, and there are at this point about 1,000 shifts a month happening across the country, and being like, is this real life? Like, is this actually happening? And then for the next kind of couple of weeks, rebuilding or finding a way to properly operate, but then the whole world would change. Every volunteer's availability change. Every service provider partner that would spent 6 years building up relationships with, every single thing about the whole world had changed. So we had to then rebuild everything and start again. It took us about 18 months to get back to 1,000 shifts a month. And I can remember, throughout the time, like, there's going to be, just because there's a pandemic doesn't mean there's still not people sleeping rough or people needing laundry. And we had a volunteer. I think Nick had the chat as a volunteer in Newcastle who was in his 80s and had emphysema, and he's like, I'm not going out in the van. It's like, mate, I'm sorry, like, you can't go in the van. Like, I don't want you to die from COVID. And it was during that time of heightened, everything. So I think plenty of times that have been bloody tough. I think the stuff that keeps us is those stories, is those people, and the more that Orange Sky grows and the more networks and communities that we operate in, the more sense of obligation, but that implies a negative word. It's not an obligation, it's a like duty that we have now to keep providing the service. And last year we did 80,000 loads of washing across Australia, and if all of a sudden we decide not to do it, there's still all that washing that needs to be done. What that actually means, there's about 85,000 hours of conversation, but that's the ticket to do it. So I think that having those two things work in unison is really important.
And maybe I'm just building on a few questions here. Another one for me that came to mind was Cyclone Marsha. So, we had this van. It's got 2 10-kilo washing machines in it and 2 10-kilo dryers. And for our washing friends out there, that's like a good basket of washing. So we that cyclone hit and we rocked up there, and people had lost power, they lost their homes, their whole livelihood had been destroyed, and the radio and whatnot get excited. Orange Sky's in town, you can wash clothes. And I can remember, like, we chose this location, and I think it's Macham's Beach or something like that. And we rocked up about 4 o'clock, and we'd have people saying, where we be? And it's like, we'll be here. And then it was like, one carload would rock up, and then another carload would rock up, and then another carload would rock up. And
I had 2 washers.
Yeah, and we had 2 washing machines, and we had like a whole road of washing. And there was this moment, it was like, how the fuck do you wash all that clothes? Like, it was just so confronting. And it was like Lucas and I was like, Lucas, again, good at maths, he's like laid them out in basket loads, which made it even more daunting. And it was like, we're here for the next 3 weeks just washing. So then again, that fires that innovation of like, wonder where the nearest laundromat is. How could we actually break into that laundromat and power up all their machines and steal their water and do all that sort of stuff. So I think like that was like, seeing the tremendous load and need that's out there in the community actually has been a very overwhelming thing for us. I remember doing a talk once, or after a bunch of talks, and not to shame this question, but a question we get a lot at Orange Sky is what's next? And I see how we set people up for that because we talk about it. And I remember saying to Lucas, like, haven't we done enough? You know what I mean? Like, why don't you go and start a laundry van? And why don't you go and deal with, getting the funding for it? Like, I was so worked up with it. And I think, that was purely because that was being asked in a nice way, and I was being very mean answering it that way. But I think that idea that, homelessness is a global issue, if we even just look at washing, 60% of the world still manually hand wash clothes. So, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And to answer that question around have we said no to growth opportunities, absolutely. Every week we'd get inquiries from all around the world, hey, can you start a service here? And we've had to say no to a lot of services, but what I'm really proud of is recently we've done some amazing innovations around, Orange Sky now operates out of fixed assets. We also run out of traditional laundromats here in Dalby in Queensland. We send the amazing volunteers out to the laundromat there, and we support the local business, and friends bring the washing there. So again, I think the constraint of saying, well, can we justify an expensive van in Dalby? No, and we haven't operated in there, but are there people in Dalby that need help? And the answer is absolutely. So I think that's sort of been we know the need is immense, and it's actually us making an active choice around where do we want to show up and how do we show up.
That's awesome. There was a great question there about who inspires you. So who are the social entrepreneurs that you look up to, and why do you look up to people doing great things?
I look up to Lucas. I look up to you too, Ruth. You do
Because
amazing.
you're short. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good. There's so many mentors and heroes that I have in my life, and I didn't like sport at school. I tried running on to like the year 12 G's rugby or E's or whatever it was, and then I got scared in the first 5 minutes, and Mum said, if there's someone big running at you and you got the ball, give them the ball. And I was like, I can't give them the ball, but what I can do is I can get off the field. So I ran the water for that year. And so the people that I looked up, and I wasn't academic, and I wasn't good at music, and I wasn't very good at making friends. So, I wasn't very good at much. It's still not very good at much, but I loved inventors, and I love people that made stuff. And so, just at the airport today, I ran into one of my heroes, social entrepreneur, a guy by the name of Corey Tutt. And, Corey's a Gamilaroi man who loves science and used to send STEM resources out to, and still does send STEM resources out to remote communities, but realised that a lot of the education that was being provided to remote communities was actually around white innovators. And Thomas Edison is an extraordinary innovator, but also David Unicorn here in Australia inventing mechanical motion, or the fish trap, or I love 3M as a innovative company. Post-it notes are like the symbol for an innovation workshop, but resin was actually invented here. So they're the inspiration that happens on country here. I'm incredibly inspired by, but I'm also just inspired by the people that make up Orange Sky, which is those friends and volunteers and those supporters. And during COVID, we were really scared about how would Orange Sky fund our service, and our supporters showed up and they innovated. Lucas mentioned that PayPal account. For whatever reason, we still have that PayPal account open, and it's assigned to my personal Hotmail. And so I still once a month get an email being like, hey, can I stop my donation? And I'm like, wow, this person's been donating since 2014. But it's a reminder that the cost of living is not only affecting friends and volunteers, it's also affecting our donors. And to see a donor who's been supporting us since 2014 say, I need to stop my $20 a month donation, is a reflection of the struggle that we as a whole society are facing. But our donors have been able to innovate. Our volunteers come up with the most cooked, beautiful, creative innovations I've ever seen, and same with our friends being able to innovate in potentially the toughest times of their life. So I look up to those people every day, and then I also look up to people like Corey. And Lucas's mum, actually. So Lucas was maybe about to say that, but I think Lucas's mum was a massive part of Orange Sky's founding story, and for the last couple of years now, she innovated in a segment of the market, being specifically women who are homeless. So Joe started a charity called Four Voices, which is now around Australia, and they specifically help everyone, but specifically women who are experiencing homelessness with a really deep level of service. And I think that there was another question about who does Orange Sky partner with, and we used to do Orange Sky haircuts, and I didn't get this terrible haircut from an Orange Sky hairdresser. I got it from someone else. But the idea there is we tried hairdressing, we tried employment opportunities. We tried different services, but what we realised is that we're good at bringing people from all walks of life together, and we're really good at partnering. So we now partner with hairdressers from all around Australia, medical providers from all around Australia. One that's very close to my heart is vets that come out and help people with potentially their only companions have healthcare for their pets. And so that's sort of a big part of Orange Skies collaborators. But Four Voices and Joe is one of those people here in Queensland that's leading the way in that space.
And is it you, Lucas, that's starting a podcast soon? What's the...
Nick's on fire.
Which one
Keep
of you...
going, Nick. So, yes. Oh, it's Orange
Are we allowed
Sky.
to talk about it?
Yeah, I think so.
A birdie told me.
Yep.
know who it
It's a project for us around challenging stereotypes. So we talk a lot, and it's actually called the F word, being friends, and it's all about friendship. And so I think for us, coming to your preferred podcast streaming platform soon, so keep an eye out for it. But essentially it's this idea around challenging stereotypes in general around our friends and people that we support, but geared around friendship. So Nick and my friendship, the friendships that we make out on vans, friends who have left us and might have passed, and the legacy that they leave. And so it's Orange Sky, but really through the voice and the eyes of our friends. So.
Now, there is someone who really thinks that your friendship has conflict in it, because someone's saying, how do you work through conflict? Are you going to talk about that on your podcast? Should we wait to tune into that?
Yeah, I reckon go in there. No, I think for us, it's one of our mentors once said, as we were going, and as Orange Sky was right on the cusp of starting to grow, he said, whether you guys like it or not, you're now like a package deal. So like, get used to it, basically. And also, like, you need to form up like a bit of a constitution or like agree some ground rules or whatever. And we're not great at writing things down, but we sort of agreed a few things between us, and that I think has held through and held true. And I think like what Nick said before is that we've been on this incredible experience together, and it's still going. And there's no one else in the world that will ever understand that, our specific journey, apart from the two of us. And I think that...
So you must know each other's strengths and be able to then, play with that and know who's best to do certain roles or responsibilities.
Yeah, and know when one of us is pissing the other one off, and we can say, mate, come on, like, leave me alone, or, whatever more colourful language you want than that. So I think for us, it's about being grounded in that. And then finding, I think when we were talking about our friendship on a podcast about friendship, it's a really interesting reflection to go, well, actually 10 years ago it was so different, and what that is now and what that's going to be in 10 years is going to continue to be different. But I think that's the nature of friendship, and regardless, back to that mentor, whether we like it or not, we're stuck together, so we need to figure out a way, and we're not going to be, I don't know, a band that breaks up over whatever, or anything like that, because I think
it'd be a good headline.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. There's someone from Courier Mail here I was chatting before. But I think it's bigger than us, and so we're not creating music or whatever. We're actually like creating this service, so we need to be grounded in that fact as well, that actually it's bigger than our friendship, but it is grounded in that sort of the strength of that friendship as well.
And sorry, Ruth, one of the things I was just interested to unpack as well is that like challenge is a part of Orange Sky's DNA, and there was a question before around like how do we support our volunteers and having difficult conversations, and Lucas, I think you misread that around our conflict. It was just how do we deal with conflict in general. Right. So
I thought Ruth was talking about just digging for gold.
But I think as well, if we just acknowledge that there's some things in life that are really, really tough, and relationships is one of them, and then dealing with constraints is another, or being thrown into the deep end. And Lucas and I personally been in that, and it's easy to fall as a victim to that, or get completely down, and we have got down on that. And also it can be the thing that glues us together, but also acknowledging that like I've said, we're working with people potentially in the toughest times of their life. Our volunteers are struggling, the financial market's tough for our supporters. So if we just put that out there, that there are things in life that are really difficult and tough, and if we create space to acknowledge that, then I think the beauty can come in going through that, and acknowledging our friendships had its ups and downs, Orange Skies had its ups and downs, but that's actually where the beautiful nuance of friendship comes from, is being there for, you know, the toughest times and the highest times, and the journey between the both.
Cool, thank you. We've only really got time for one or two more questions, actually, and it's been really lovely chatting with you. So maybe there's one more question that we can answer from Slido, but while we're just looking at that, this series is called Game Changers. And game changers are people who really want to disrupt the status quo or really try and do things differently. So would you consider yourselves as game changers? Is that what you believe yourselves to be? Or who is it that you believe you are?
I think Nick said it before, or I cut him off and said that washing machines been around forever, vans been around forever, homelessness is a challenge that is faced in so many communities, and we're just two idiots that had that idea to combine a couple of those things, and I suppose the, again, persistence or stubbornness or naivety to keep working at it and keep giving it a go. So I think that by virtue of doing that, that's how I view myself. I think we have a similar view of that, the cool or exciting thing that when we look around Orange Sky, or we see the community, or we see, you know, everyone here in the room tonight who care about what comes out of our mouth, I think is a massive privilege and honour. But it's also, I still think that we're just two idiots that had this idea and gave it a go, and we're pretty good at learning and growing and evolving as people, and knowing when we've hit our capacity or limit and go, I think someone else needs to do it from here, sort of thing. So I think that we've big mixture of luck and an idea that caught on, and we're able to keep evolving it, and then also just this explosion of demand and need and across the country and the world.
Well, thank you for giving it a go. There's a lot of people that are very grateful to you. Okay, last question then. Do you mix whites with darks?
We wash everything at
A
Orange
really important
Sky.
question.
I was in Adelaide last week out on a shift, and a friend rocked up with 3 backpacks and said, I want to wash these backpacks. And I was like, can you wash backpacks? Like, and I think that's a reminder of people. Those 3 backpacks were that person's house, that person's storage system, that person's treasure chest. And so again, I was like, I hope we don't break these backpacks. And like, how do they spin? But we've washed wedding dresses for people who have been affected in flood-affected communities. We've washed boxes of belongings of children who have passed away, and parents have held on to those clothes as some of their most valued possessions in their life. We've washed school uniforms for kids that are going to school tomorrow morning. We've washed uniforms for people that are going to rock up to work tonight and be cleaners and be school teachers and be all these extraordinary people. So, I think, again, Lucas's mum's a thematic here, but Lucas's mum, always talks about just like a load of washing has different garments that are different shapes and sizes and different colours and fabrics and textures, is just like us as people, is that we're all different shapes and sizes, and we've got our own design or appearance, but just like garments have rips and tears and imperfections, it's just like us as humans that we have our own imperfections. So just like that same thing with challenge, is that if we just acknowledge that we're all made of the same stuff, the majority of the times we have more things in common than we don't. And if we just acknowledge that, then I think the beauty comes in realising that you put a bunch of random shit in a washing machine, something random's going to come out.
Thank you so much. Can we give Lucas and Nick a big round of applause, please? Yeah, thank you. I'd also like to give Candice and Julie a big round of applause for signing for us today. Thank you so much. It has been my honour and privilege to have a chat with you tonight. Thank you to everybody for coming along and sharing in the conversation, everybody on live stream as well. It's been great to get to know you better, and we just all encourage you and say keep going,
Sorry for swearing.
keep testing and exploring all those innovations, and thank you for inspiring all those other young people who are coming through with some great ideas. They need people like you to look up to so that they can come up with their own brilliant ideas of how to create social change. So thank you so much again. Thank you. So to end tonight, I'm going to hand over to Craig Furneaux from QUT. Associate Professor Craig Furneaux, thank you for giving the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Ruth. These guys got off the stage as quickly as they could. Look, thank you, Lucas and Nick. I don't know, I was trying to summarise the story and I thought, oh, they've solved a technical problem, that's good. And then they've solved a social problem, oh, that's good. And then they've helped volunteers to connect, oh, that's good. And then they've worked out how to get a change in public policy to work with council, oh, that's really good. And then there's another technical problem, and then they're working in different cities, oh, that's really good. And then they're working overseas, and I heard about you, but I haven't heard your story. And I think you guys are game changers. Seriously, you just... And you think you've heard it all, and then, oh no, we're working in remote Indigenous communities, and we're working in disaster communities, and we're partnering with other people to solve... It's amazing. I have the privilege of leading the Australian Centre for Philanthropy and Non-Profit Studies, and look, our goal is to try and build capability in the sector. And if you're keen to make a difference, if you want to build a business that wants to make a difference in the world, we'd love to chat with you and help you, because we need hundreds and thousands of organisations that care more about money than care about society. And if we can do that, we might actually, if we all have a crack. I just loved your straight Aussie style. It's just fantastic. So, for those of you who'd like to revisit this conversation, it's going to be recorded tonight, and it's going to be available on the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame website within the next week. So on behalf of QUT and the State Library, we'd like to thank you, our valued corporate partners who make the work of the Queensland Business Leaders Hall of Fame possible. Your ongoing support and commitment enable Queenslanders to gain new insights from game-changing business leaders. For those of you who are here tonight, don't forget there is an exhibition just across the way looking at the purpose built about architecture in Queensland. And I do want to just again thank State Library for hosting us, our translators, Auslan, Simon. I'm now having a complete blank. Auslan interpreters, thank you very much. I'll get there eventually. But particularly to Luke, Lucas, to Nick, and to Dr. Ruth Knight, thank you very much for sharing with us. And enjoy your evening, and we look forward to seeing you later in the year for another more fantastic Game Changers events to come. Thank you, everybody.